It is the glory of God to conceal a matter. To search it out is the glory of kings. This is the Message to Kings podcast.
Episode 359, Judas's betrayal and the hour of darkness begins. When Jesus gets arrested and Judas betrays him, it's a parallel Bible dream, really. You layer the four accounts from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and they each tell you a different part of the story. It's a pretty absolutely incredible perspective. And when you see that it's this actually quite an action oriented scene, where here comes like a garrison of troops almost. I've heard it up to 200 to 600 men coming to get Jesus with swords and clubs and axes and torches. And here they come. They're coming to get Jesus. He's betrayed by Judas. Peter pulls out a sword and cuts off the high priest servant's ear. And then all within this moment, Jesus puts the ear back on. If you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And then he makes other declarations. And then there's also these three strange events that actually happen all within this context of this story on this action-oriented account. And Jesus is led away and all the disciples flee. And if it was in a movie, it would be, very split action oriented. And all you have is these four accounts from four different witnesses, each telling the story a different way. Or, of course, they're not all true witnesses. Luke is not a witness. He's writing this story, but he gets it from different accounts and people. And as you read it, they're adding a little flavor and a little detail that the other ones missed. And it is a parallel Bible student's dream, because you read something different from every perspective. But there's also some weird, super weird things that happen in the middle of this. There's a naked man who runs through this almost scene of not really battle, but and then you have a guy's ear gets cut off. Jesus puts his ear back on, and as he puts the ear back on, he says, "Permit me in this." Strange language, hard to understand. And then there's another event where he actually tells us something about the season, and he calls it the hour of darkness, basically implying the hour of darkness has begun. Also, when they say, "Are you Jesus?" he says, "I am," and they all fall over. That is bizarre. So here we go. Judas's betrayal and the hour of darkness begins. John 18:1. After saying these things, Jesus crossed over the Kidron Valley with his disciples and entered in a grove of olive trees. Judas the betrayer knew this place because Jesus had often gone there with his disciples. The leading priests and Pharisees had given Judas a contingent of Roman soldiers and temple guards to accompany him. Now, with blazing torches, lanterns, and weapons, they arrived at the olive grove. Jesus, fully realizing all that was going to happen to him, so he stepped forward to meet them. "Who are you looking for?" he asked. "Jesus the Nazarene," they replied. "I am he," Jesus said. Judas, who betrayed him, was standing with them, and Jesus said, "I am he." They all drew back and fell to the ground. Once more he asked them, "Who are you looking for?" And again they replied, "Jesus in Nazareth." "I told you I am he," Jesus said. "And since I am the one you want, let these others go." And he did this to fulfill his own statement. "I did not lose a single one of those who you have given me." All right, I would stop there. He says, "I am he." And when he says, "I am he," they all drew back and fell to the ground. What do you do with that? A whole contingent, a garrison, 200 to 600 Roman soldiers on the ground flat. The Pentecostals would say they were slain in the spirit. It's hard to know what's going on here and how this happened and what kind of explanation. There has to be something in the vocabulary. I am he. The words are I am. And if you remember back in the Old Testament, he told Moses the name of God, I am. I am implies he is the one above all. No man can stand and say, I am my own master, I am my own person. He's not above. That's the epitome of pride. But God is above it all, and he created it all. He is, because he's created. He's the uncreated one. And when he declares, as if he's saying the name of God himself, there is power in that name. And he's declaring, I am giving myself over. I am doing this on my own accord. I am not doing any of this for the will of God, of man. I'm doing this for the will of God. And when he says I am, and the repetition of the name of who he is, that power is released. And that power that's released in this garden right here is radical in nature, and it has a release of power. And what happens after this can only be confirming that he did. There is a release of power, and there is something that has happened in the spirit realm that's already happened, and there's a release of power in this garden from heaven. And it causes them all to fall over. However, there are so many interpretations and try to explain what has happened here. But in the end, it says they all fell over. Now we shift over to Matthew 26:48. The traitor Judas had given them a prearranged signal. You will know which one to arrest when I greet him with a kiss. So Judas came straight to Jesus. Greetings, Rabbi, he exclaimed, and gave him the kiss. My friend, go ahead and do what you've come for. Then the others grabbed Jesus and arrested him. Judas betrayed him with a kiss. It is sad that that was the way it went down for Judas. This would be the last time he saw Jesus. And he was the one doomed to destruction. For the amount of a slave, he betrayed Jesus. Luke 22:49. When the other disciples saw that was about to happen, they exclaimed, Lord, should we fight? We brought swords. And one of them struck at the high priest's slave, slashing off his right ear. But it's the book of John that tells us who did it and what this slave's name was. John 18:10. Then Simon Peter drew a sword and slashed off the right ear of Malchus, the high priest's slave. But Jesus said to Peter, put your sword back into its sheath. Shall I not drink from the cup of suffering the Father has given me? Now, the next events and the replies to what, and the response to what Peter does, you get all sorts of responses, and Jesus says different things, and there's even different interpretations of the Bible of certain things that happen here. Matthew 26:52. Put away your sword, Jesus told him. Those who use the sword will die by the sword. Other statements are, those who live by the sword will die by the sword. Don't you realize that I could ask my Father for thousands of angels to protect us, and he would send them instantly? But if I did, how would the scriptures be fulfilled that describe what must happen now? Whew. We could go there for about an hour. And Jesus said to the crowd, am I some dangerous revolutionary that you would come with swords and clubs to arrest me? Why don't you arrest me in the temple? I was there teaching every day. But I get ahead of myself. There's more in another one of the versions. It's almost funny that Peter cuts off the ear and he doesn't get healed in all the versions. But he does heal the ear in the book of Luke. Luke 22:53. 51. But Jesus said, "No more of this." And he touched the man's ear and healed him. So, depending on what book of the Bible you're reading, the ear is not put back on. It's just there on the ground. It's kind of crazy. Go to BibleHub.com sometime and type in Luke 22:51. Jesus said, "No more of this," and he touched the man's ear and healed him. That is a very strange thing to say. No more of this, as he brings healing to the guy. He doesn't actually, it's like he's rebuking his buddies, but bringing healing. It doesn't explain, normally there's something to say when you heal someone. You just touch the ear and put it back on. And that's what he does here. But what I find super fascinating is if you go to BibleHub.com and you type in this verse, the NIV says no more of this. And LV, no more of this. The Berean literal Bible says, but Jesus answered and said, "Permit only as far as this." And having touched the ear, he healed him. New King James, but Jesus answered and said, "Permit even this." And he touched his ear and healed him. The NASB, but Jesus responded and said, "Stop, no more of this." And he touched his ear. Stop, no more of this is very different than permit even this. I don't know exactly what to make of that, except that to me, and when we get to the end of this story, this podcast at the end, you'll see that there's something that shifted in the spirit. This is where Jesus is being surrendered over to darkness, and they actually says the hour of darkness has come. To me, it's like Jesus gave up his power on earth so that he could be surrendered to the will of his enemies for an hour, he says, technically a day, so that they may torture him and kill him, and so he may fulfill the law and be the perfect sacrifice. He even gave up his miracle working power. And to me, he's talking to his Father and he's saying, "Permit me of this one last thing before I give up my power." And he heals his ear because he doesn't want that to be against his disciples, because those disciples need to get away. Permit even this. Permit me this, Father. It doesn't say Father, but that's how I see it. It's almost a prayer. Permit me even this. And as he touches his ear, and it's healed. It's very different than stop. It seems like strange language to pray as you're laying hands on someone's ear to heal it. Stop, no more of this. And he brings a heal. It's a practical explanation. There's different ways to look at it. But that's one of the second of the very strange things. The first was the power release and them all falling down. Slayed in the spirit, if you want to look at it from a different vein, or Christian denominational view. The power is released when the word came out of his mouth that I am. They fall to the ground. The second one is the strange language of healing. Permit even this. And now we get to the most bizarre of events in this little action scene that's happening as Jesus is arrested. We have bloodshed. We have a healing. We have a surrender. And now a naked man. It's the strangest thing. Mark 14:50. Then all his disciples deserted him and ran away. One young man, followed behind, was clothed only in a long linen shirt. And when the mob tried to grab him, he slipped out of his shirt and ran away naked. Now, one could imply, there's different interpretations, of course. This is the book of Mark, so this would be Peter. Could be Peter was in his pajamas, I don't know, and his shirt was ripped off. He ran away naked, ashamed. I get it. That's a fine explanation. It's odd, and why they wouldn't name him. Well, maybe it's not odd. The book of Mark is really about Peter, and it didn't name Simon Peter cutting off the ear. In fact, they even left that part off, who it was. But one of the men pulled out his sword and struck the high priest's slave, slashing off his ear. So, yeah, I mean, maybe it was Peter. And they were kind of ashamed, but he was not ashamed enough to mention it. So that's one explanation. Rick Renner is kind of a Greek scholar. His interpretation is kind of super interesting. He said that there was tombs in this location at the Garden of Gethsemane, and they kind of rise up the hill. And the word for linen kind of ties in to the burial cloth implication. And then the statement of I am and the release of power caused an accidental, kind of quoting him, an accidental resurrection. That is super interesting. Is that an interpretation? Absolutely. Is it fact? I don't know. But it's really interesting because it is really weird that you have a naked man running through the scene. Could it be Peter's shame? Absolutely. Could it be an accidental resurrection? You never know. There will be people, mighty people of a different age when Jesus is resurrected that are walking through Jerusalem. Resurrection is not an uncommon thing around Jesus, and it's not an uncommon thing soon after this time period. So maybe the display of power and the shift of season may have caused even more disturbance in the spiritual forces, causing something to happen here. But it is a very bizarre scene. And if you were even just, you don't want to picture a naked man, but if you were to, anyone who's ever made this part of the movie, they did not put the naked man in it because it doesn't go. It just doesn't make sense. There's a side story to this, and it's not mentioned at all. But it does speak, does confirm the shame that they do have for running away. And we'll find that later with Peter, if that is kind of what the implication is here, too. So, yeah, multiple potential things going on, but it is very bizarre. All right. And to kind of conclude the parallel scriptures here, we got Matthew 26:55. Then Jesus said to the crowd, am I some dangerous revolutionary that you've come with swords and clubs to arrest me? Why didn't you arrest me in the temple? I was there teaching every day. But this has all happened to fulfill the words of the prophets as recorded in the scriptures. And at that point, all the disciples deserted him and fled. But what's more profound to me is this statement about the hour of darkness. Luke 22:52. Then Jesus spoke to the leading priests, the captains of the temple guard, and the elders who came for him. Am I some dangerous revolutionary, he asked, that you come with swords and clubs to arrest me? Why didn't you arrest me in the temple? I was there every day. But this is your moment, the time when the power of darkness reigns. Try Bible Hub again. In this one, you can see in different ways it's stated, but this is your moment. The hour of darkness reigns. And that's where we're at. The hour of darkness begins, basically. For a 24-hour period, there will be nothing but bad news for Jesus. But this is where he surrendered to be the spotless lamb, to take away the sins of the world. There'll be a corrupt trial. There'll be the framing. There'll be event after event that will lead to his torture and his death on the cross. But also the redemption of all mankind. We'll be talking about it probably for the next 3 months. The redemption of all mankind, the great exchange, the entire hour of darkness that has come, the worst day and the greatest day in all of history. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Message to Kings. Feel free to check out the website, messagetokings.com, or if you want to chat, email us at messagetokings@gmail.com.